Okay, so the model is basically ready for UV mapping. Um, I might make some little changes later on, but for now we're going to go ahead and get started with the UV mapping. So there's just a few little things we need to do in Maya before I can take it over to UVLayout, which is what I'm going to be using to do all the UVs. So the main thing that I want to do is I want to organize everything so that it's all one mesh. That doesn't mean that everything has to be connected, but I just want to make sure that there's no groups or anything, no little placeholder sort of things in the hierarchy, because sometimes that will cause uh, duplicated meshes and stuff in UV layout that I don't want. So I'm just going to go to my hypergraph hierarchy, and I'm going to check things out. So like here I have a group, so I'll get rid of that group. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to pull these things out of their groups. Okay, so that gets rid of all the groups. I only had a few. And then I want to, just check the model, make sure nothing got messed up. And it looks fine. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to delete those empty groups by just going in here and seeing. I'm actually going to make a group for just a moment, just so I can see all this other stuff that I don't need. That's my background reference plane there, so I'll just leave that because it's frozen. Okay. Then I'm going to select all my objects again. I'm going to go to Mesh, I'm going to go to Combine, and then I'm going to go to Edit, Delete All by Type, and Delete History. Okay, so now I'm left with just a single object for all of this. Now you can always undo this by just going to Mesh and then Separate, and that will separate it into its individual pieces again. But when I end up exporting and importing this as an OBJ file, it'll end up coming back in as one solid piece anyway, and then I'll separate it back out. So this is good. The only other thing that I want to check is I'm going to go over here to lighting under my little viewport. So I'm in my perspective viewport, and I click this lighting button, and then I'm going to turn off two-sided lighting. Oh, hold on, I'm in the wrong viewport. There we go. Lighting, and then turn off two-sided lighting. And what that will do is just make it so that anything that's got its normals inverted will be like solid black. And since I don't see any solid black, it means that everything is facing the correct direction. The only other thing is that this screw here is not on both sides, so I need to fix that. But other than that, it looks good. So I'm just going to go separate this again. So now all the pieces are individuals again. Duplicating, excuse me, duplicating the screw, grouping it, do a negative scale. Okay. And I'm just redoing all that combination. So I'll just combine it, edit, delete all by type history, Okay, and there's my object. Okay, so now all I need to do is export this as an OBJ. So I'm going to save this scene as a new scene. Okay. Then I'm selecting the object, going to File, and Export Selection. And I'm just going to export that as concept weapon 01. And that's an OBJ. Okay. So that part is ready, and so now I'm just going to end up opening it in UVLayout. So I'll be right back with that. Alright, so I opened up my scene folder and I dragged the OBJ file onto UVLayout icon, and it popped open this load window here, and it's already at the right location. So this is my weapon model OBJ file here, and we have a couple of little settings down here. Basically I just want it to be poly, and then under UVs I'm hitting new because I just want to create all new. I'm not editing ones that are already there. If you already had some of them done, or you had some that you just needed to make a little change to, then you could click edit and it would load in whatever UVs are already on the model. There's also a few other little options here, but we're not going to worry about any of that. We don't need any of that. So just hit load. Okay, so once you click load, you'll get a window like this will pop up. I'm just going to go ahead and expand that out. Okay, so this is our model here, and this is our 3D view. So this is where we'll be doing our editing of the model, and then we also have our UV view, but I don't have anything dropped yet, so I can't show you that. And then if you want to change views, you use 1, 2, and 3 on your keyboard. So 1 would be the UV area, 2 would be for editing the model in 3D, and then 3 is sort of a preview, and that's used for checking for stretching and stuff when the model's all UV'd out. So we're going to be working in 2 for now. So let's just go ahead and start on like a little example piece. I'm not going to go into detail about how to use UVLayout. They have video tutorials right on their website. It's really simple. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of start UVing, and let me show you a quick example. So I'm just using the C key on my keyboard to cut, and so I cut along edges, and then I hit enter, and that splits it. Okay, and then if I hit D for drop, then it drops that piece, and now that's going to be in my UV view. So if I press 1, I get to here. So 2 is edit, 1 is UV, and then here I can flatten this piece. So it'll just kind of lay it all out. It just does that for you, and then it's color coded by any distortion. So red is compression, green is good. So all this is good with a little bit of compression in here, which I could alleviate by making more cuts, but I don't feel like that's necessary for that piece. And then if I go to 3, you can see that piece in 3D with the color coding. So the compression is right in here, but it's pretty minimal. You don't really see it. There's some, but most of it is on that top part there. So that's not really going to be an issue. But so that's the basics of doing things in here. And this is our 0 to 1 UV area in this red cube. So we'll end up fitting all of everything into this red cube. So I'm going to probably time-lapse this where I'll just be doing all the UV mapping. there's not a whole lot, to talk about with it. It's just making the cuts. People will ask, how do I make, the cuts? Where do I make the cuts? And it really just comes down to practice. You'll learn what works best for you based on, what are your texturing techniques and stuff. But in general, it just takes practice to find what works for you. So like for here, I'm making a cut right up the side because I know that's not going to distort anything. And then I'm cutting out almost the entire sphere, just leaving one little attachment point here. So when I drop it, it will unfold without distortion, nice and easy. So here's, you can see everything's basically just that nice light green, and it's going to be pretty easy to texture this. I can just paint the circle whatever I want, and then I can follow these curves for any kind of lines or whatever. So you really just have to get in the mindset of imagining how an object is going to unfold, and then just going with that. And if you mess it up and you need to drop it back to the other screen, you just hold Shift, press D, and it'll drop it back to the edit so that you can make some more changes. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just start working on this. I might use a few features that you won't see in the basic free version of UVLayout, like copying UVs. So like I can UV map one of these pieces here, and then since they're all the same, I can just layer them either over each other, or I can just copy the UVs and have them all laid out on separate pieces. In general, I prefer to do my UVs without overlapping, just so that when I paint it, things aren't all the same. For some of the small pieces, like the screws, I might have them be separate pieces. I'm not sure. I might overlap them, I might not. We'll see how I feel. I probably won't overlap them though. I'm not sure what this little error is here, so I might have to end up fixing that in 3D later on. I'm not quite sure what's happened there. It looks like something is overlapped or flipped, or some vertex got moved or something, but I'll worry about that later. So anyway, once I get all of this cut out and mapped and everything, I'll come back and talk a little bit about just laying it all out in the UV space, and then we'll move on. So I've gone in and UV mapped everything. Um, so you can see this is showing all the seams and any stretching or compression that's happening. And it's pretty good. It's mostly green. We do have a few little spots, but nothing major, and that's not going to be a huge issue since I'm going to be painting the textures um, somewhat in 3D as opposed to just doing it all in like Photoshop or something where you would want, maybe less compression. Um, so if we look in here, you can see all my stuff is pretty disorganized. I've used the box feature to group certain pieces together so that they'll stay together because I'm going to automatically pack all this down. If you weren't going to automatically pack it down because like you're using a free version or something which doesn't support that, you would just need to position everything within this red square manually. So you could just move stuff around and try and optimize it yourself. Um, Obviously, all this isn't going to fit in there at its current scale. So if you need to scale it to fit it all in, you want to make sure you select everything all at once and scale it all together. That way it's uniform, scaling, and nothing is going to have more texture space relative to its size than anything else. So just keep that in mind if you have to scale it to fit it in here. With simpler models where you have less pieces, you may not even have to do any scaling. Sometimes you want to scale it up larger just to get as much texture resolution as you can. And the same thing applies to that. Just make sure you scale everything all at once. But I'm going to go ahead and just pack all of this into this box and see how it looks. So it's going to go through, and it has its own little algorithm that it uses, and it'll pack down each box individually, and then it'll pack everything down into the UV texture coordinates, the 0 with 1 space. So after it does that, sometimes you still need to optimize it, move things around just to get as much space as you can and make sure nothing is overlapping and all that good stuff. But usually it does a pretty good job. So it's almost done with all those boxes there. Okay, now it's arranging everything to fit. The nice thing about this packing feature is that it also automatically scales everything uniformly to fit within the box. So you can see everything is in there. There's a lot going on. You could reorganize this, to make it more logical for a person to look at and do stuff with, but I've got the major parts grouped together, so that'll help. And also, since I'm going to be painting somewhat in 3D, it's not going to be a huge issue for me to find where all the little parts are. But so I've grouped certain things together, like these are the screws, so I know that those are all going to be the screws. Big pieces, like here's the grip. That should do. So now we'll just save this, and it'll be ready for taking back into Maya and getting ready for texturing.